Hello, are you out there? I'm Mark with Homebrew Fever Dreams, and we're back for our part 3 of the Selemite class review. Now, we've done some homebrew magic spells for wizards, druids, the sanguimancy class. We've done boons and banes, which were about 15 of each. So these are an assortment of curses and blessings that the Selemite class can put onto creatures. It's the exclusive capability of the Selemite class, although I did make the point that hags would probably have access to those boons and banes if you needed just a list of interesting little charms or baubles, temporary things that could be dumped onto characters and creatures in your play sessions. But after setting all that up, we're going to do the Selemite class itself. The Selemite class would be pretty hard to understand without knowledge of those other things, but we'll get through it. It'll give you a flavor. If you haven't watched the other videos, that's fine. Let's get crunchy with the Selemite here, and then you can decide if you want to go and review those other videos if you haven't looked at them yet. There's a lot to it, though. This is an extremely technical class with a lot to read over. You don't have to have knowledge of all those spells, all the boons, and all the banes, ultimately, if you want to play, as you'd only have to handle up to 4 boons and 4 banes at a time in a handful of those spells from that spell list. I am a vessel bred for sacrifice, a mortal who knows fully the mortality of these trials. My blood, however, is more than a vehicle for fate. It is a temple for my sacred blood. My mind may falter, but my blood will not let me fail. This is coming from Tyrixac, Herald of Elran. "Night Wrens!" shouted the priest, wrapped in old clerical tattered robes that threatened to fly away in the storm's wind. His hands were raised to the sky, a gesture of welcoming to whomever or whatever was watching from above. "Hear my plea!" The priest took an ornate carving knife hidden between 2 patches of cloth on his robe and slit his arm from elbow to wrist, right? Oof. He winced and let out a shrill cry, and as he gazed upward, he saw that joining with his vision was his blood. Looking down, he saw that his blood was being pulled upwards towards the sky. Blood began to coagulate in the heavy storm's wind, and soon enough the storm had cleared out just enough for the man to see a great cloud of blood far above. Heavy rain from the storm had turned crimson, and soon enough all the commoners who saw the strange priest wrapped in old clerical tattered robes screamed in horror and pain as their flesh melted away from their stinging blood that coated their clothes and faces. People ran to their houses and found that the floor of their houses were soaked in the same blood. It had burned through the rooftops. Only the priest left the slums unscathed, his old clerical tattered robes now still as the storm's wind no longer brushed against him. Oof. That's an introduction there. Holy cows. Selemites are devout people who draw power directly from their own blood. Some are bred into the role from highly prestigious lineages. Others found it to be their salvation on the brink of suicide, self-harm. For whatever reason, these people have learned to harness their blood to manipulate the mortality of others and themselves. Yes, this is quite a grim blood for power type of class. The themes of bloodletting, I would say that's a better way to say it, blood sacrifice, bloodletting, are there. The Woad cycle. The most fanatic of Selemites believe in an elusive ideology known as the Woad cycle. In its most simple form, the Woad cycle subscribes to the belief that all of everything has a beginning and an end, and when one dies, another is allowed to reincarnate. This ideology is taken in many different forms. Some use it to describe how they can draw their blood to heal another, while others merely see it as an especially superficial form of bartering. Interesting. But something for something, nothing for free. Selemites are split up into different factions, each faction following a specific ideology known as a rite, subclass. Each of these rites holds different principles of the world, a mortal's manipulation of it, and the Woad cycle as a whole. Training acolytes of each rite varies drastically, from ritualistic sacrifice to school-taught lessons in skullduggery. People who follow one of these rites are known as rite keepers, with different roles to nurse the strengths of the rites, such as mentors training acolytes, and most often a wise elder surveying the blood rituals. Here we get to the idea of an ultimate sacrifice. Selemites are soldiers fighting in a constant war over the manipulation of life force. Often soldiers die after completing their ultimate sacrifice. This part doesn't come in so much to the rest of the subclass, and I would recommend possibly OP that you flesh that out a bit more. You have a pretty chunky paragraph there, but I found like pretty much no other references to that later on. So your intro is quite long for a given class relative to what we see for other D&D 5e style classes. So that might be a paragraph worth trimming, because I just didn't see where it came in there. We get into the death and rebirth, a little bit similar. The abilities of Selemite are only possible if one is mortal, as the life force of these people are being channeled through their blood. Thus, undeath and immortality are both highly debated upon between Selemites. So, yeah, this is, again, just kind of leaning towards flavor. So you have several paragraphs of flavor, and you have these large headers here, but they don't necessarily... It's just a whole lot of color and context, probably more than you need. And you read that as though there's going to be some... that's going to come up later. It's like, oh, I'll need to pay attention or think about this now for some later point. You don't really. So I would trim the fat a touch on that. Creating a Selemite. The abilities of a Selemite are seen as taboo at best and monstrously heathenish at worst, but Selemites know better about their magic and how any lowly commoner or idol-worshipping priest. They understand that each mortal has the ability to twist their life force into something magically potent and truly powerful. Selemitic origin. Every Selemite discovers how to harness their blood from someone or something. It's important to know where you learned these abilities from and how to use them. Sometimes they can be found through more experimental means, but most often there is a mentor that teaches you the basics so that you may further your expertise in the craft. So here they just have a mentor table. Obviously, you could just choose any mentor you want. Ultimately, though, unfortunately, the mentor isn't brought up again. So again, a lot of fluff and not really seeming that necessary to me. So sorry, but there's like at least 5 paragraphs there that are just an extremely elaborate thing that doesn't really impact understanding the class from there on. It's like, I like your flavorful beginning part to give you an idea of what it gears towards, but trim the fat. In addition, you should collaborate with your DM on personality, traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws for this mentor to fully flesh out a character for your backstory. The mentor doesn't get brought up again. It just, if people want a mentor, they would just have a mentor. But the idea that your class description is telling how to make a mentor for a player, that doesn't... is questionable. None of the other classes do anything like that. The Selemite. So this is kind of a standard progression block here. Selemites will start out with cantrips. They'll start with 3, and they'll get up to 6 here by level 20. Otherwise, your proficiencies, your your ASIs, all that's pretty straightforward. But over here, this is probably the more significant part. The boons known, the banes known. So think of this as curses and blessings, blessings, curses. At first level, you don't know any, but once you choose your right, you get access to your 1 bane, 1 boon, and from there you will progress. I noticed that the banes always advance a little bit before the boon, which is I think is clever. Just so you're gaining, it's kind of ticking back and forth as you go down. You don't need to know all the boons and banes to start with, and as you pick, every time you level, you have the ability to swap out a boon or bane. So if you read through more, you gain better understandings of how they might work, you can change them as you go. But ultimately, you do max out at 4 and 4 out of the 15 and the 15. So you're only going to be getting to about 20% of what's available, which is good because you don't want to juggle too much. It's already a pretty chunky class with a lot to know. Sanguine rituals. Every Selemite has a different way to honor their fellow followers as well as their own mortal form. These rituals usually occur on a set day or time. Okay, this is another one of these things where the ritual part belongs up in the character flavor and description up above. This is just another massive paragraph that doesn't come up again anywhere. If a player wants to have rituals that their character follows, then that's fine. But I would just have it as a sentence in the description above saying most Selemites are trained by a mentor and trained in a variety of ritualistic things they do to learn about their abilities and to harness their powers. Right? It's just like squeeze it all together. The Sanguine ritual, as far as I know, has nothing to do with anything else later here. Quick build. You can make a Selemite quickly by following these suggestions. First, Wisdom should be your highest ability score, followed by, I gotta scroll back up here, Intelligence or Charisma. Secondly, choose the Acolyte background. Third, choose the Blood Spit, Toll the Dead, and Spare the Dying cantrips, along with the following first level spells: Cure Wounds, Inflict Wounds, and Witch Bolt. Yeah, so it gives you a lot of versatility, and ultimately the Selemite, in my estimation, is like a great Swiss Army knife of a character. Very situational, super support. They're either buffing or they're debuffing. So those are good spells. Interestingly enough, though, you do recommend that you're creating your Selemite character with Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma, not Constitution. So this is one of the few classes, it's extremely rare, where it's all mental-based stats are the primaries. Here you go. Class features. 1d8 per Selemite level, and your first level hit points are based off of 8 plus your Wisdom modifier, not your Constitution modifier. And at higher levels, it is, again, a 5 plus your Wisdom modifier. You gain light armor proficiency, proficiency with shields, simple weapons, no tools. Saving throws will be Constitution and Wisdom. Questionable. I would maybe go Constitution Intelligence or Constitution Charisma, just based off of how you're building the class. I don't know why Constitution would now be important, unless up there you're meaning Constitution instead of Charisma. Maybe that's meant to be Constitution, in which case, yeah, but then you're not using Constitution here for your HP. So just for flavor, I would not have a Constitution save. I would do it as Charisma or Intelligence. Choose 2 skills: Arcana, Deception, History, Insight, Medicine, Persuasion, Religion. Yeah, kind of clothy stuff. Equipment, you're going to get the light crossbow or any simple weapon, component pouch, or arcane focus, Dungeoneer's pack or an Explorer's pack, a whip, nice, and roughly 100 gold pieces. For spell casting, your body is a conduit for your spells, and your mental fortitude is only as pronounced as your mortal frailty. You cast Selemite spells using the spell list seen below. Essentially, this is the spell list for the class, much like you would have a wizard spells available. This is the Selemite. Now, I've already gone over the blue spells are the new spells created by OP. Really well done. I think they're fantastic spells, but ultimately, you know, a lot of the spells you'd typically be familiar with, but I would read up on the 12 or so, the dozen or so new ones as you're selecting them. But you do gain access to spells all the way up through level 9 here. So it goes very high. Up at level 9, Astral Protection, Storm of Vengeance, True Resurrection, Power Word Kill. Some beefy stuff. They have the ability to cast like one big bad boy. Cantrips. At first level, you know 3 cantrips of your choice from the Selemite spell list. You learn additional Selemite cantrips of your choice at higher levels. Up to, again, I think 6 total at level 20 would be your max out. Spell slots. The Selemite spell table shows how many spell slots you have to cast your Selemite spells at first level and higher. Spells known. You know 3 first level spells of your choice from the Selemite spell list. The amount of known spells for Selemites is calculated differently than most other classes. You calculate how many spells you know at your level, add your proficiency bonus to your caster level. You can only ever know spells that you can spend using your hit dice maximum, not including blood dice. We will get into blood dice. They're a relatively limited resource the Selemite has that kind of puts a throttle on how much spell casting. Now, when a Selemite's using their boons and their banes, which is kind of like a separate spell list essentially, they're sacrificing hit points. They're like rolling dice to see how much damage they do to themselves to put forth that magic. So you have blood dice and spells, you have boons and banes, and essentially hit point sacrifice. I don't know that you need to do the proficiency bonus plus caster level. I mean, is that something that is becoming common with the new classes versus just using your wisdom modifier plus your caster level? Like, why have it be different? I don't see that's that necessary. I mean, ultimately, your caster level is going to be a 3 probably at a minimum to start if they're making a useful Selemite. So proficiency bonus would be 2. I wouldn't change it up for no reason personally, but yeah, it's kind of neither here nor there. I don't think that matters too much. Your ability is pretty standard here. 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your wisdom mod. So that makes sense. That's boilerplate. Ritual casting, you may cast ritual if the spell is tagged with it. Spellcasting focus. You use ritual daggers or sacrificial knives as your spellcasting focus. These blades have the statistics of an improvised weapon as they are not intended for combat. That's right. These might be highly decorative. They might be made out of soft metals like silver or copper, gold, in which case they're not going to hold an edge. I mean, you can sharpen them, but they're not a fighting dagger or something like that. So think of them more as a religious item, right? Hit dice. The hit dice of a Selemite function differently than other classes. Rather than just being used to recover hit points, the hit dice feel the powers of a Selemite. And so rather than using spell slots, Selemites use hit dice for their spell casting. Consult the hit dice spell level table below to see how many hit dice each spell costs per level. And you can see here to cast a spell, the blood dice. You use your hit dice to cast spells. Your blood dice are reserved for modifying your boons and banes. Your boons and banes are cast through your hit points. So it's not that complex like when you read through it. I was just trying to remember. I'd read all this a couple days back. But yes, when you want to cast straight spells a la a wizard, you don't have slots, but you'll simply burn your character's hit dice. So here you go. First level spell is going to cost you 2 of your D8 hit dice. They're gone. You cannot use them now to recover on a short rest. So you have a pretty limited number of them. Bear in mind, you I don't think can cast spells until level 2 because you would only have 1 hit die, right? So I think level 2 would be the first time you can cast a first level spell. Let's keep going though. Are we cut off a little bit? Yeah. Additionally, when casting spells at 6th level or higher, you must sacrifice an amount of hit points equal to the average total of the hit dice expended for the spell level. Saying that rather than roll, so you cast you're casting a 7th level spell, instead of rolling 13 d8 hit dice and totaling it up, it'd be a lot of counting and adding. The OP is just saying, no, you're going to take the average of what this would be. But OP, quick reminder to you, just extend this box and put the number, right? For 6th level and higher, just say a D8 is going to, on average, roll 4.5. That's the average, right? 10 times 4.5 would be 45. Just say, yeah, if you're going to cast a 6th level spell, it'll cost you 45 hit points. You don't need to roll. You're just going to deduct this, as well as you're going to lose the 10 HD. Additionally, it's an addition. So you lose the hit dice, the 10 of them, and you would take 45 points of damage. Now, when the boons and the banes are being cast, you actually are rolling like a 2d8 or 2d10 or 2d6 or a 5d12, right? So you calculate the damage that way and you take it. But spell casting, there you go. Give us these numbers. Give us what the average is for that. Don't make people figure it out. It's a set number. Add it to the table, please. Blood dice. As a Selemite, you have additional hit dice that are equal to your proficiency bonus. These dice do not count towards your hit dice maximum or to your hit point maximum. So the blood dice are based off your proficiency. So you're going to have 2 to 6 of them. So that's why I keep saying it's a very limited pool. Now, let's find out how we use those. Not too many places the blood dice get used. Sanguine exchange. At second level, you've learned to harness the sanguine arts to manipulate the mortality of yourself and those around you. Using hit dice, you may bestow both bonuses and debuffs on yourself and others. Consult the Essence Boons and Essence Banes list for all available boons and banes you may choose. Keep notice of how many boons and banes you may choose as detailed on the class table. Yeah. Sanguine Rite. At second level, the origins of your Selemite abilities have begun to blossom as you delve deeper into the secrets of your belonging rite. Each rite detailed at the end of this class description, and each one holds different principles concerning the manipulation of life force. 3 subclasses, we'll go over those. Essence Persona. At third level, you grasp the sanguine magic has begun to be pulled towards one of 2 directions, the beneficial or the detrimental. Choose only one or the other. You're going to be a wheel priest or a woe caller. You got to go one way or the other. A wheel priest. When you choose a boon that requires you to target a willing creature, you may expend one of your blood dice to target 2 creatures rather than 1. This ability does not function for boons. This ability does not function for boons as an equivalent exchange or boons above 12th level. Right. Now, you should explain in the boons, though, that you cannot use blood dice to amplify it, if that's the case, at least for a wheel priest. But ultimately, they're saying, yeah, some of the very high-level boons you can't multiply out by using your blood dice. You may target an additional creature at 11th level costing 2 blood dice and another at 18th level costing 3 blood dice. So at the higher levels in this class, you can target 3 and then even 4 targets to get the boon. But that's where your blood dice are getting used up very quickly. It obviously at these early levels, but before you get to 11th level, you're only going to have 4 hit dice at that point. 4 blood dice. Sorry, your proficiency is 4, so your blood dice are 4. So yeah, you would use up 3 of them to target 2 additional characters, 3 total. So yeah, you'll burn through them really fast. Now, a woe caller, when you can choose to be the wheel priest or the woe caller. Woe caller, when you use a bane that requires you to make an attack roll against a creature or the creature to make a saving throw against the bane's effect, you may expend one of your blood dice to either you gain a +2 to the attack roll or the creature to suffer a -2 penalty to their saving throw. I would just add 2 to the save. Yeah, I know it's functionally the same thing, but I would just always keep the themes as close together as possible. Either you gain a +2 to hit them, or the save they're trying to win against is 2 higher. But, it's not broken. It's just my opinion in that case. But ultimately, again, very limited blood dice. But this is how you essentially get one of your banes, one of your curses to take effect, is you're going to burn your handful of blood die because you really want that BBEG to get that curse on them and not resist. So that's how you punch through defenses is with your blood dice if you're a woe caller. The bonus penalty may increase up to ±3 at 11th level, costing 2 blood dice, and up to ±4 at 18th level, costing 3 blood dice. So again, you may upcast the number of blood dice you're burning at once. Ability score improvements, standard ASI. We don't need to cover that, but it's typical for any other class. Now, at 15th level, you gain access to the Crimson Shroud. When you're bloody during an encounter for the first time, you can use your reaction to spend 2 blood dice to recover an amount of hit points equal to your caster level plus your wisdom modifier and a +2 to your armor class in saving throws until the start of your next turn. So this is situational. It's very high level, 15th level or higher, but it's essentially saying, yeah, the first time you take damage in a fight, you may react to that. So it's a limiter. It's only a reaction to when you've been damaged for the first time. You got to choose to do this or not. You're going to burn 2 blood dice. You'll essentially get at level 15. That would be 15 plus your wisdom. We'll say which will be around 4 by then. So you're going to get 19 points to 25 would be the upper end. At the start of a fight, first time you take a hit. So it's kind of letting you shrug off or maybe gain a little bit of health back. And then until the start of your next turn, that +2 armor and saving throws just means you're pretty beefed up at the start of the fight. It keeps you fresh. It keeps you in the fight. Maybe allows you to fall back and have your other party members come in tank for you, to put a layer between you and them. Because one thing about the Selemite class is they're not a tank. They are not a frontline fighter. I say they're a backline fighter. That like they're the furthest guys back, 15 feet. There's the front line, then there's some support characters, and then they're behind the support characters. That's kind of how I see this class functioning. Then finally, your capstone is Free Spirit. At 20th level, your soul becomes too stubborn to pass into the afterlife. You gain immunity to necrotic damage total. That's nice. And if you die, call upon your soul to perform one last act to save yourself from death. In this wraith-like form, you retain all your game statistics with maximum hit points, but cannot distinguish friend from foe. So you're essentially, your spirit breaks free from your body, refusing to die in the moment, and instead becomes a vengeful wraith, unable to determine who is on their side and who is against them. Now, what you need to do is, if you reduce a target to 0 hit points before 1 minute passes as a wraith, the target instead dies. Your body is reduced to 1 hit point instead. If a minute passes, you and your soul die. If you have not been restored back to 1 hit point, back to life. If you can't reduce a target to 0 hit points yourself as a wraith, you will die after a minute. But during that minute, that wraith goes nutso and attacks probably the weakest or most damaged creature around it, trying to kill it. If a creature dies from this ability, from your wraith form, their soul is instantly destroyed. Their life force infused with your own. Gonzo, you just sucked up their essence. This ability can be used again. Little correction there. Can't be used again until you've taken a long rest. So you can't just go wraith over and over during a battle. Just one time. Sanguine rights. So we're going to get into the 3 subclasses here. Right of the Puppeteer. Those who have found ways to manipulate the life force of lesser creatures around them have been drawn towards the teachings of the Rite of the Puppeteer. This rite teaches that sacrifice is not just a sacrosanct ritual, but rather a means to coerce and siphon the vitality of others. Mortality is shared by millions, many of whom do not deserve the powerful essence that composes their being. Why not scrape a few lowly bandits off the sanguine's shelves? You're like, I'll take that, and I'm going to take your soul, too. Thank you for your donation, kind sir. Ooh, co-receive? Coercive presence. At 2nd level, you gain proficiency with either Charisma Deception or Charisma Persuasion checks. If you are already proficient, add double your proficiency bonus to whichever skill you choose. Additionally, when you fail a charisma check, you can expend 1 of your blood dice to reroll the check. You must use the new roll, even if it's lower. That's right. No strings attached. At 6th level, when an enemy dies within 60 feet of you, you may use your reaction to expend 1 of your blood dice and call for the enemy to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the enemy is instead reduced to 1 hit point and is charmed by you for 1 minute. After a minute passes, the enemy then dies. Oof. Yeah. You can use this trait a number of times equal to half your proficiency bonus rounded down. So it's 6th level once. You can use it once. Gaining all expended uses back when you take a long rest. So this is one of those abilities you'll have to keep its own little counter for, independent of your blood dice, your hit dice, and spell slots, whatever else you've got. You don't have spell slots, but you get my point. You have to track that. But ultimately, if someone dies, you may use a reaction to expend the blood dice. The enemy has to make a wisdom saving throw, even though they're dead. I guess you're dealing with their spirit here, right? On a failed save, the enemy is instead reduced to 1 hit point and is charmed by you for 1 minute, becoming a 1 hit point zombie for all intents and purposes, charmed by you. Once that minute's up, though, they die anyway. So you are just rise, my pet. Yeah, it's like limited necromancy. Ooh, it's cool. I like it, though. You could do a lot with that. Shared burden. At level 9, when you use a boon or bane, the hit points you must sacrifice will be shared by an unwilling foe. Oh, so using the boons and the banes, which we covered in video 2, you might roll a 5d10, and normally you would take that damage to you. You know, about 25 points of damage on average. You're just gonna bleed it out, right? Because you're essentially like sacrificing your blood to generate magical power. That's what you're doing as a Selemite. But with this, you're saying no. You can find someone, and they're gonna sacrifice half of their life force, and you'll sacrifice the other half. Choose a creature within 30 feet. The creature must make a wisdom saving throw, and on a failed save, the creature takes half the damage dealt to you, rounded down, from the use of one of your boons or banes. To use this ability, you must expend a number of blood dice equal to half the hit dice spent from the boon or the bane, rounded down. So you are limited. This is one of those rare abilities where your blood dice acts as a downward pressure on how you can do this. Now, I could see you choosing one of your own party members, but make sure you talk to the DM and the other party members about potential PvP being okay. I mean, you may have an agreement with like your tank, your barbarian who has a lot of hit points, to do this with you to help defray some of the costs if they're down and they understand how your magic works. But just be cautious with that if you're going to be targeting your own teammates. You can use this trait a number of times equal to half your proficiency bonus, rounded down, gaining all expended uses once you take a long rest. Yet another ability you've got to track a number for independently. But this one is at least gated by your blood dice there. So you're not going to use it that often because you're going to have a limited number of blood dice until level 13, extra blood dice. At level 13, you have additional blood dice equal to your wisdom modifier. So this is the one way in the game you can go, with this class, you can go beyond the 6 blood dice, which would be blood dice equal your proficiency. So 6 would be the most you're ever going to have. Well, here at level 13, you get your wisdom modifier in addition. So I would guess your wisdom would be about 4, plus 4 at this point. So yeah, you could be sitting on top of 8 at level 13, I would say. And then you could work that up to as high as 11 by, hitting max level, 18, 19, 20. You'd be up to 11, I would say. Strings of the Woad. At 17th level, you've learned to wield the very life force in an opponent's form to suit your own needs, like a puppet on strings. You can cast the Dominate Monster spell at will by expending 8 blood dice. If the creature succeeds on the saving throw, the expended blood dice are refunded. That's right, you get them back. They're not wasted. This again ties into the idea of this with the Selemite, that the blood, it's an exchange, right? It's an equivalent exchange. So if you don't gain control of this creature, you can't expend the energy in your blood or your life force. And I kind of say with the Selemite, it's like, yeah, it's sanguimancy, but ultimately you could flavor it as like your life force, your energy, or something like that. I don't think it has to necessarily be blood. It's very evocative. It adds a cool thing. But I think it would be a way to kind of like skin it in that way of like you're just giving up your spirit force or whatever. But yeah, if you don't get something out of it, you can't expend it to start with. And I like that. I like that. That's kind of a flavor to the genre, the class, whatever. Yeah. At the start of each of the dominated creature's turns, you may use your reaction and choose to either regain up to 2 expended blood dice. Hold on. And that's dominate monster, but obviously it would work on any, creature as well. So you can get up to 2 of your blood dice back, or heal yourself for a number of hit points equal to 2 of their hit dice rolled. So you're essentially siphoning away this poor creature's life force to either refuel your blood dice or to actually give you hit points. Hit dice, which you roll, you add those to your health. The Dominate Monster spell effects last for up to 1 minute rather than 1 hour, requiring concentration. Once you use this ability, you cannot use it again until you've taken a long rest. So it's a once per, but yet another thing to track. Now, and important to note that the Dominate Monster spell does only last for 1 minute while this is going on. Now, it's possible OP means that you can refill your hit dice. No, number of hit points equal to... Okay, so this is hit points. You are not siphoning their hit dice to add your hit dice pool so you can cast more traditional spells. This is hit point recovery or blood dice recovery. Okay, let's keep going. Rite of the Thirst. So this is our second subclass now. Those who have embraced the capricious cruelty of the sanguine arts follow the Rite of the Thirst, whether it be barbarian loyal to their clansmen or a devout priest with the names of those they wish to avenge carved into their flesh. The Selemites of the Thirst Rite revel in death, victory, and might. Magus proficiency. Its second level, you gain proficiency with light and medium armor as well as martial weapons and shields. You've already stated they have proficiency in light armor and shields, so I would say just the medium armor and the martial weapons is what you should specify here. Additionally, you can perform an hour-long ritual to make a weapon of your choice your spell casting focus. Ooh, nice. Yeah, that's cool. You must be proficient with the weapons to use this ability, but that's all weapons at this point. You had basic and now you have martial, so it's all weapons. You can use anything. Heightened skill at level 6. You gain one of the following features of your choice. Spinning blades. You know what? I'd almost say this is possibly not strong enough. It's pretty limited. It's pretty with the puppeteer. You get the charisma skill based proficiency whatever, 2 charisma-based deception or persuasion, and you can burn a blood dice to re-roll one of the rolls. So it's got a couple things. With this, you're just like, yeah, you can use medium armor and martial weapons. I think you need to add one more little thing to give it a little versatility there. Just my opinion. Okay, heightened skill. At 6th level, you gain one of the following features of your choice. Spinning blades. While wielding a one-handed weapon in each hand, you can add your ability modifier to the damage bonus attack made with the offhand weapon. Additionally, starting at 12th level, you can expend one of your blood dice to reroll a strength or dexterity saving throw that you would otherwise fail. You must make the new roll, or take the new roll even if it's lower. That's cool. That's at 12th level. It's pretty high up there. But yeah, I mean, strength or dex save, that's good versatility. But you don't get it till 12th level. That's pretty high up. Okay, sword and shield. While wielding a one-handed weapon and a shield in the offhand, you gain +1 bonus to your armor class, and this bonus is increased to 2 at 2nd level. That's nice. So there's a little bit of progression there. I think that's cool. Just reflecting here on the spinning blades. Sword and sorcery. While wielding a one-handed weapon and nothing in the offhand, you gain a bonus to all damage rolls you make with the weapon that is equal to half your wisdom modifier rounded down. You can add your full wisdom modifier at 12th level. So again, just progressing damage as you advance your character along. That's nice. Never going to be a frontline fighter, but it's just kind of keeping up with the Joneses there. And finally, two-handed. When wielding a two-handed weapon, once on each of your turns, you can sacrifice one of your blood dice to make another attack with the weapon. That's big. That is pretty nice. But again, very limited blood dice pool. You don't add your ability modifier to the damage of the bonus attack, unless that modifier is negative. You may use this feature twice per turn instead of once at 12th level. So you could go from one two-handed attack to 2 two-handed attacks to up to 3, provided you have the blood dice to burn. So you could do a real burst of melee damage. It's pretty cool. Quench of Thirst. At 9th level, whenever you slay a creature with a final blow, you regain 1 of your expended hit dice or blood dice in an amount of hit points equal to 1 of your hit dice. So you're going to get a hit die or a blood die back, your choice, and then you roll a d8 and gain that hit die of health back. Yeah, that's a nice little take back there. Additionally, whenever you take the attack action on each of your turns, you can attack twice instead of once. So that, yeah, I think that's cool. And again, keeping your damage output in line with the trajectory of some of the other more martial classes. Other martial classes get the 2 attacks at 5th level, second attack, but you get it at 9th level. That's fine. You have so many other abilities between your spellcasting, your cantrips, and your boons and banes. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. And your subclass. Living Death. At 13th level, when you receive damage that would reduce you to 0 hit points, you can use a reaction to expend 2 blood dice and be reduced to 1 hit point instead. Nice. Once you use this ability, you cannot use it again until you've taken a long rest. It's another thing you've got to track, but don't confuse this with the other subclasses. I'm mentioning many abilities you have to track individual numbers for, but each subclass has their own. So it's not as bad as I make it sound, but still quite a few numbers to track to play this class altogether. Finally, capstone for this subclass, Quickened Rejuvenation. At 17th level, you've learned to harness your life force to allow your body to enter a trance-like resting state, even in the midst of combat. As an action, you can expend your hit dice to heal yourself for an amount equal to the chosen number of hit dice rolled. You can use this trait a number of times equal to half your proficiency bonus, rounded down, gaining all expended uses back after you take a long rest. So you got to track how many times you've used this, but essentially, as an action, you can expend your hit dice to heal yourself for an amount equal to the chosen number of hit dice rolled. It's a confusing sentence the way I'm reading it, but ultimately you're saying you may choose as many hit dice as you'd like to roll and regain hit points equal to the roll. I probably didn't say it much better, but yeah, if you have 10 hit dice left, you can just be like, I'm going to take an action, I'm going to meditate right now in combat, and you roll all the hit dice you want, however many you have left, or some part of them, and get those health back. So it's a massive boost of health in the middle of a fight. It's pretty powerful. I like that. I do like that. Especially if you're going to be casting spells bit by bit, a lot of times you're not going to have all your hit dice left. So it's not overly powerful. I would say it's more akin to like a paladin's lay hands, if they were to like lay hands on themselves. They're like, oh shit, I'm level 10. I'm just going to give myself 50 hit points. And it's like, boom, right? Kind of along the lines of that. Rite of the Bonded. This is the final subclass here. Those who follow the Rite of the Bonded are those that have found ways to share the burden of sacrifice. Inevitability is a threat that looms over all mortals, but we need not traverse it alone. Through the use of familiars emboldened by the blood that composes them and the pacts they've made with close allies and trusted cohorts, the Selemites of the Bonded Rite find not just strength in numbers, but triumphant willpower also. Bonded Familiar. At second level, you gain the ability to create a familiar from untrained beasts. Choose a beast that is no larger than medium and that has a challenge rating of 1/4 or lower. You may permanently sacrifice one of your blood dice to turn this beast into a familiar that you can summon at will. You contain your familiar within a crimson bead that you can either wear on a necklace or in a ring. So it's pretty specific. I would just say what you're saying is that your familiar can be taken away from you if someone takes the item that the familiar is housed within. But I think to say a crimson bead is like super specific. I don't think you should be that specific, but you should say your familiar is housed in a small piece of jewelry or something that you keep on your person at all times. And the implication being if it were to be taken away from you, stolen from you, or lost, you have lost that familiar. Now, this is a permanent loss of one of your blood dice to form this. So if you at this level had 2 blood dice, you're down to 1 blood die because you have this familiar. You've bonded that blood die power in the bond with the familiar. As an action, you can summon your familiar from the bead. The familiar joins the initiative roll after you and has the stat block of the associated creature with an added resistance to necrotic damage and immunity to the charm condition. Nice. If the familiar is reduced to 0 hit points, it teleports back into the bead to recuperate, at which point you cannot summon it again until you take a long rest. The familiar is telepathically linked to you. It is friendly to you and your companions and will obey your commands to the best of its abilities. If you are incapacitated, the familiar acts on its own, focusing on protecting you and itself. If you travel further than 120 feet away from your familiar, it immediately teleports back into the bead to recuperate, regaining 1d10 hit points every minute. So, although you're telepathically linked, you could probably kind of communicate very well and use your familiar as a spy. It is limited to the 120 feet. So you can't have the spy stay in a castle a mile away or fly over another army 10 miles away. You can't, or go all the way down into a dungeon or something and see through its eyes. You have to be, that's an important distance thing. I like that. It does have to be close to you. If the bead is destroyed while your familiar is in it, or the familiar is reduced to 0 hit points while the bead is destroyed, the familiar dies. When your familiar dies, you regain the blood die that you expended creating the familiar. So you do get that blood die back. But ultimately, it's saying you don't ever have to worry about your familiar dying outside of the bead on a mission or fighting. If it gets killed by an orc with the battle axe, it's not dead. You didn't lose your little friend. It just jumps back into your piece of jewelry, into your bead in this case. Word recuperate, you can resummon it after you finish a long rest. But if the bead is destroyed, or the piece of jewelry, yeah, then your familiar really is gone. So it's nice. People like their pets. They don't want to be losing their familiars all the time. I understand that, and I think it's good flavor for the class. A new bead can be created by spending 200 gold coins and 8 hours of downtime, and a new familiar can be trained by performing a special 1 hour long ritual only you know with the beast that meets the aforementioned restrictions. So you can recreate the bead if you need to. Friend of a friend. Is 6th level, you can create another familiar using your ritual. Moreover, to summon a familiar, you can now use either an action or bonus action. That's nice. Does the second familiar cost you another blood die permanently? You don't say that, so I don't think so. You now have the ability to bond a familiar not just to yourself, but also to one of your allies. Once per long rest, you may choose one of your familiars and allow it to be telepathically linked to both you and an ally of your choice. Additionally, whenever the creature and you are familiar within 5 feet of each other, the creature has a +2 bonus to wisdom and charisma saving throws and advantage on saving throws against the frightened condition. That's right, your little buddy makes you smarter, makes you friendlier. That's right. And it makes you more courageous. You're not so afraid. So I like that. It's a good flavor. I almost think to answer my own question, it couldn't cost another blood die because you have too few of them. So it's a freebie. Rending Strikes. At 9th level, your familiar gains the ability to siphon the life force of your enemies to further your own means. Once per round, when a familiar successfully attacks a creature, the creature is dealt additional damage equal to 2 of that creature's hit dice. And you regain 1 of your expended hit dice or blood dice. So you can siphon a little bit back that way. Nice touch. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, gaining all expended uses once you take a long rest. So for this class, something you got to track. Extra familiar number 3. At 13th level, you can create another familiar using your ritual. So essentially, you're allowing your friends that you're playing with, the other characters, to have their own pets all through you. But it's kind of a nice touch. Like it's almost like a little Pokemon party, but you're killing a lot of creatures because you're crazy blood adventurers. But yeah, it's a cool class. And it's pretty unique. I don't think there's anything else quite out there like it that I'm familiar with. Finally, your capstone, Sanguine Trafficking. At 17th level, you can use a bonus action to reduce one of your familiars to 0 hit points in order to cast a 5th level or lower spell without expending any hit dice using the same bonus action. Yeah. Now, you're not destroying your familiar, but you are sending it back to the gem, essentially, which you won't be able to resummon it until after a long rest. But if you have 3 of these little critters running around, it's essentially 3 level 5 spell slots is what they are. But spells that you may use as a bonus action. Because not only can you do the sacrifice as a bonus action, but you can cast a spell of 5th level or lower without any hit dice like you normally use. The monster's life is the spell slot activator, not your own hit dice. But you use the same bonus action. If I'm reading that correctly, that means even if the spell would normally take an action or a reaction or whatever, it's like, nah, you do the bonus action, you get that. So it's 3 5th level spell slots you have per long rest that all operate off a bonus action. Pretty powerful, but it is at 17th level. That's one of the few things I would say really would take some serious role play to make sure it is balanced. Because at 5th level, you've got some pretty good spells available to you. And the fact that they can be triggered as that bonus action, and you got 3 per long rest. Yeah. Fireball, fireball, fireball. All right, that's it. At this point, we get back into the essence boons, and the banes, which we've already gone over. So that's it. That's the whole Selemite class. This video is only 50 minutes. OP, thank you so much for sharing. My main critique on the class is a lot of the flower and flavor stuff you put in at the beginning is really big paragraphs, probably too many of them, in kind of in different ways and orders. It doesn't... You get to be as creative as you want, and it's your class, but it doesn't feel like the classes out of the book in that format. You don't need to make a class out of the book. I'm not trying to say that, but like they do follow a pretty specific format, and many people that do homebrew try and track along with how it's laid out. Like even you come up with your own tables and stuff, but you go in there and you're talking about these rituals and these mentors and all this stuff, and it's like you don't need to. Just again, it's like it's a sentence. It's just a sentence. You say, well, you probably will have a mentor. Another Selemite will most likely find you as your young child, as your abilities manifest themselves, who will teach you the ways, right, of your right, or you may take up rituals that are part of your religious practices that you may or may not observe every single day, but that's completely the player's choice on how they want to flavor the class. I think you're saying, well, this is how I envision it, and I'm going to tell you 2 pages of text on this. 2 pages is like 1 page too many of color text and theme text. Let the player have more autonomy on that, in my opinion. That would be my main critique of the class. But that's it. Thank you for sharing, and anyone who watched and got crunchy with us breaking this down, I appreciate it.